There's a small percentage that are probably still the undecided. The one thing, whether you are an R, whether you're a D, whether you're a progressive, whether you're a MAGA, whether you're an independent, a non-party affiliated, whether you're Green Party or whatever, libertarian, we are all one nation. We are all one community. We are neighbors. We are family. We are friends. It's okay to disagree on politics and still love each other and be friends. So while we get into the craziness, and it's going to continue, we've already been on the crazy train. It's just going to get more loco as it continues. Let's remember that. We are the United States of America. We are the people.
Welcome to the New Health. As people are getting sicker and sicker at younger and younger ages, we are bringing thought leaders in that are revolutionizing the healthcare industry to make this a healthier planet. I'm your host, Jessica Preston. Today we have with us Dr. Andrew Sun, men's health urologist from Urology Partners of North Texas. Thank you so much for coming and being with us again, Dr. Sun.
Absolutely, thank you.
So last week we talked a bit about how men are coming to see you at younger and younger ages, and I'd love to talk about what the elephant in the room, low T, low testosterone.
Yeah.
So if you could open that conversation for us.
Sure. Yes, probably one of the most common diagnoses that I see. So we'll start with some definitions. So testosterone is a hormone. It is the male hormone, but women also make testosterone. Women make about 10 times less testosterone than men, but in males, testosterone is essentially responsible for all the things that you might think of as male stuff, right? Sex differentiation, muscle mass, hair, voice changes, all of those sort of secondary sexual characteristics, we call it. So when you have low testosterone, then a lot of those things can suffer. But testosterone does even more than just the sexual aspect. It also controls weight and like general metabolism. It controls mood, it controls energy, it controls your ability to think clearly. So when you have low T, that guy can present as someone with sexual dysfunction. It could present as a guy who's just fatigued and tired all the time, no energy. It could present as someone who's unable to have a child, like low sperm counts. It can present as a lot of different things. And so this is a really, really critical hormone. And unfortunately, people have lower and lower levels of it nowadays.
Why?
Because they're not healthy. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's
right?
it. It's like, the answer is, the question is always why.
Yes.
Why are these things happening at younger and younger ages?
Yeah, there's actually interesting population level data now that shows that over time, the average testosterone levels have gone down and down and down. And the thing that it most certainly correlates with is just average health getting worse, right? Because testosterone is naturally synthesized by every guy, and it's usually done so during sleep. And then it's impacted by weight, and it's impacted by exercise, especially large muscle group weight-bearing exercise. And so if you're sedentary, stressed out, don't sleep well, don't do a lot of exercise, of course your T is going to be low.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about sleep if we can.
Sure.
So it takes, in what stages of sleep, there are different stages of sleep. So there are certain stages, I'm presuming, that testosterone is created?
Yeah, we think it mostly happens in deep sleep. And it is definitely probably the number one overall thing that contributes to low testosterone. In fact, if you had to give a diagnosis for contributing to low T, it's sleep apnea. And a lot of patients have sleep apnea, especially if you're obese and you have sort of a difficult airway. You can have more sleep apnea, then you have low T, then you're more tired, then you don't work out, then you don't, you sleep more. It's just a very vicious cycle, right? And so your testosterone levels vary throughout the day. It's more pronounced in younger men, and as you get older, it's a little bit less. But everybody basically has their highest testosterone levels first thing in the morning, and then over the day it goes down, and then you sleep and it regenerates, and then it goes down, and then you regenerates. So that's why sleep is so important. There was an interesting study done some years ago in a group of college-age kids. They basically took a bunch of kids, put them in a room, had them sleep 8 hours a night for a week, and then had them sleep 5 hours a night for just a week. And their testosterone went down by like 150, 200 points.
Wow.
Now, for reference, a normal testosterone range is like 400 to 600. Less than about 300 is low. And so if you go down by 200 points from not sleeping, you can very easily go from normal to not so normal.
So sleep, we're talking about sleep. That makes perfect sense. When you're not sleeping well, then you don't have the energy to exercise, and it is a vicious cycle. And when we don't sleep as well, we also end up with our poor nutrition choices when we're tired. We don't have the healthiest choice in that. So that, I'm presuming you also speak, you had said previously you speak with people about nutrition as well.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, one of my fellowship mentors, Jesse Mills, he basically condensed all of the men's health stuff into 3 things: eat, move, sleep, right? If you can do those 3 things, you're probably going to be pretty healthy. And if you don't, then you're not going to be. So sleep is one. What you eat is who you are, right? It's very, very important. Obesity is a massive cause of low testosterone as well. Some of that is because of decreased production. I can get an interesting explanation, actually. The reason why men have scrotums is because your testicles want to be 2 degrees cooler than the rest of the body, so they hang outside. So when you jump in a cold pool, they try to get warm. When you're out in the sun baking in the heat, they try to loosen up, right? And so if you're especially obese and you basically have a warmer environment, bigger legs, you're sitting all the time, essentially your testicles, which are your testosterone factory, are baking in between there, and they're just not going to work as well, right? And then men also make estrogen. Now, a lot of people think estrogen is bad, and I'm a guy, and I don't want estrogen. You need estrogen, right? You need estrogen for bone health. You need estrogen for sex drive and libido. You need estrogen for a lot of things. You just don't want too much. Too much estrogen in men can cause gynecomastia, or man boobs. It can cause emotional lability and things. And so the thing is, men can't make estrogen by itself. They have to make it from testosterone. So there's an enzyme called aromatase, which takes testosterone and converts it into estrogen. That enzyme is found in fat. And so the more fat tissue you have, the more aromatase you have, the more of your testosterone you basically leach away into estrogen. Mm-hmm. And we'll see those guys have low testosterone counts, but higher than expected estrogen levels, gynecomastia, these kinds of things.
Well, that's interesting. So what we can see then is one of the reasons why when people are obese, do we just presume when they're obese, they have more estrogen? Do you just look at someone obese and presume there's more estrogen, their testosterone might be a little lower, and then confirm with testing?
Pretty much. I can usually make that assumption. Now, it's obviously not true in everybody. Some people metabolize differently, and different people are going to have different ratios. But in general, if you see a man who's relatively obese, you can reasonably make an assumption that his estrogen to testosterone ratio will be a little bit off.
Okay, so as you had said, so if you're moving your body, if you're eating healthy, and then you're sleeping well, then that is our best thing that we can do for healthy testosterone levels for men.
Exactly. And the movement part is also, that's the third arm. And it's not just that movement helps you lose weight and therefore you're thinner. It's that the actual act of exercise, particularly weightlifting, particularly large muscle groups like squats and deadlifts and some of these kinds of things, actually seems to help stimulate or improve testosterone production as well, independently of its effect on general health and weight. So eat, move, sleep, and you're good.
I would love to talk to you. You had talked about testosterone range of normal being 400 to 600. You had talked about how these younger men, college students, when they had less sleep, 5 hours a night in that study, that went down 100 to 150 points. Mm-hmm. That's dramatic.
Dramatic.
So when we talk about the opposite end, if they're low, let's talk a little bit about supplementation, how that works.
Sure. Yeah. And one thing to say about the range is that there is a normal range of testosterone, but if you look at the papers on it, it goes from 300 to like 1,000. And so but clearly, you would say, I guess, a guy that's 305 is normal and a guy that's 995 is normal, but these two guys are probably not the same, right? So it's not quite so strict as like, as soon as you cross 300, you become symptomatic. There's definitely a gradient there. Then what can you do about it? So there's essentially 2 main arms in what you can do. We'll focus on, let's say, testosterone boosting, because what a lot of people probably think of as testosterone is testosterone replacement therapy, but in a way, the healthier thing that you can do first is to try and boost your own testosterone. So going back to the original 3 things, you can eat better, you can lose weight, you can exercise more, and critically, you can sleep better. If you have sleep apnea, which maybe you don't know, but maybe your partner says, wow, you really snore a lot, or it seems like you're almost choking in the middle of the night, you should probably get a sleep apnea evaluation. And just wearing that mask can boost your testosterone by 100 to 200 points. Right? Weight loss, 10% to 15% body mass loss can increase testosterone 100 to 200 points as well. So you start adding these things up and you can go from very low to very normal very quickly just by doing those things. Now, in addition to those lifestyle things, there are also some medicines that we can use. There is no FDA-approved medication specifically for testosterone boosting, but there are medications that we have used for 50 years that basically do this. I'll talk about 2. So there's a medication called Clomid or clomiphene, mostly used in women. What it does is it basically tricks your brain to tell your testicles to make more testosterone. So you have these 2 brain signals called FSH and LH. FSH makes sperm, LH makes testosterone. Clomid makes you make more of those things, so then you have more signal to tell your testicles, hey guys, make more testosterone and make more sperm. And then when I was talking about that estrogen conversion thing, there's a medication that you can give to block that enzyme. So you prevent that testosterone from being converted to estrogen. You don't want to overuse this, but certainly in the proper doses, you can help to kind of balance those ratios out. And those things will work pretty well.
That's great. So, and then testosterone-wise, there are pellets and creams and
there's everything.
and
Yeah, there are more ways to do testosterone than just about anything, right? So you can take a pill, you can do an injection, you can put a pellet in your butt for 3 months, you can rub a cream on every day, you can put like this jelly up your nose, lots of different ways. Probably the most common ones that you'll see are either testosterone creams. These are every day. They work honestly okay because skin absorption is just not the best. And unfortunately, there is a risk that it can be transmitted onto others if they touch that area. There was an episode of House about this. Injections are probably the most overall commonly used. That's a once-a-week injection. It is an oil. It's a little hard to inject. You know, that definitely elevates testosterone, but remember, these are all testosterone replacement therapies. So when you're taking things like injections, you actually stop making your own testosterone. And when you stop making your own testosterone, you also stop making sperm. So a lot of guys who are exploring TRT, especially when they're young, they're not really notified of all of these potential side effects like sperm and that kind of thing. And we could talk for a long time about those. And then the most recent one that's interesting is the pills. Pills are easy to take. I like using those a lot because they're relatively easy and they don't seem to have nearly as many side effects as some of the other versions of testosterone.
Oh, that's great. That was a great recap and review. So remember, we're going to be doing our healthy things first for ourselves to be able to improve testosterone count, and then look at either something like clomiphene where we can make more. We can make more testosterone. Is that with assistance? I suppose it's not exactly naturally.
Yeah.
And then in addition, we could look at replacement, but not in the case of when you are trying to have a baby or improve your actual sperm count.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So if you're seeing people are coming in younger and for those as well.
Yeah, I think advertising is big, and so a lot of younger men come in with low T, and oftentimes they don't actually have numerically low T. They may have some of those symptoms. In general, the younger the guy is, the higher his baseline testosterone is, the more I will recommend a boosting strategy like the clomiphene or an astrazole or these kinds of things. If they're older, if they have lower starting testosterones, essentially if they're not producing very much, then by replacing their testosterone, they don't have much to lose. So I'll more likely give those guys replacement therapy, pills, injections, things like that, pellets.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you find partners are bringing people in?
I do sometimes. Definitely on the fertility aspect, I think a lot, right? That's usually, unfortunately, women carry most of the burden of fertility. And, it's usually they will start the process and then only later on does the guy come in. But a lot of times, yes, the partners will bring is like, he's just cranky all the time, or he's just so low energy, Although I will say on the low T aspect, many men do find their way in themselves because of even popular culture and people know about this.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm
Yeah.
glad that men are being proactive in doing so.
Yeah.
So much for being with us again, Dr. Sun. Would you please let everyone know how they can reach you and what you're working on right now?
Sure. So my practice is called Urology Partners of North Texas. We're in 7 locations in the DFW area. Our website is UPNT, urologypartnersnorthtexas.com. You can find us there. Happy to see anybody in clinic or virtually throughout the state of Texas. And, you know, what are we working on right now? Well, there's a lot of interesting new developments in the testosterone space. I think some of the newer testosterone products, like the orals, seem to show some promise that you can actually give replacement without necessarily shutting down fertility and that kind of thing. So I'm working on a few studies towards that aspect as well.
Oh, that's really exciting. I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Please stay tuned after these messages for our next guest.
If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could pressure shop. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free. Your insurance may even cover your new Inogen system.
If you're on oxygen, you need to be using an Inogen.
Call 800-367-1753. That's 800-367-1753.
¿Tiene un carro, camioneta o SUV viejo en su casa? Aunque no funcione y piense que es chatarra, usted puede llamar al número en pantalla y donarlo a Susan G. Komen para ayudar a salvar una vida. Nuestro personal calificado va hasta su domicilio a recogerlo de forma totalmente gratis. La donación de su automóvil, camioneta o SUV viejo ayuda a apoyar a las personas afectadas por el cáncer de mama, así como también trabajo vital de Komen en investigación, atención al paciente y educación. Necesitamos su ayuda. Tal vez considere que su auto viejo es chatarra o que no vale nada, pero ese auto no deseado es importante para que Susan G. Komen continúe ayudando a las personas con cáncer de mama. Llame al número en pantalla hoy. Iremos a recoger su auto rápidamente. También recibirá una deducción de impuestos por su donación caritativa. Ayúdenos a ayudar. Llame ya.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
We're back with Dr. Diane Mueller, naturopathic doctor who works with women ages 35 to 60, going from average to awesome in their health, hormones, and relationships. Welcome back, Dr. Mueller.
Thank you, Jessica. Another great day.
Another great day is right. So I would love to talk with you about foreplay. We've talked before about how foreplay can be leading up to from the week prior or however that may be. So I'd love for us to talk a bit about foreplay.
Yeah, foreplay is so important, and we're going to throw out some stats and some surveys on the importance of it, but I think one of the things to start with is to piggyback on what you just said, which is foreplay oftentimes we think of as that thing we do right before the big thing, right? And I think it's really important to begin to redefine foreplay. So couples that find that they are pleased with their foreplay experience oftentimes describe foreplay as everything that's happening from one intimate moment all the way in between another intimate moment, right? So it's the simple things such as rubbing a partner's shoulder or a back when we pass them in the kitchen. It's a simple thing such as sending a couple flirtatious texts to them while they're at work. All these types of things are actually considered foreplay. So that's the first phase, is bringing some of that kind of beginning new relationship energy back into things, that novelty that we experienced in the beginning. And we do that by taking foreplay, not just this thing that we do in the bedroom a few minutes before the big thing, but actually bringing it more into, hey, how are we actually flirting? How are we relating to our partner throughout the days in between where we are actually truly intimate?
So a lot of our audience is probably watching and they're in a spot where they have been in longer term relationships. And if that's the case, and they haven't been experiencing this flirting from time prior to the big thing, how do we help them starting to incorporate that into their lives?
It's a great question, because especially if we haven't been doing that, or in situations where people may have gone weeks or months or even years between having sex with their partner, this can really feel awkward, right? So the first thing to understand is it's normal. It's normal if you're like, wow, I haven't done this with this person, and this person become my best friend, or really care about them. And then you go into doing this, and if you feel awkward, you're right on track, right? It's supposed to feel awkward, and there's just like a level of like, if this has been something not in your normal life, that we just need to accept of like, oh, just like any new skill or any skill that got put on the wayside and we can bring it back, there is going to be a level where it just doesn't feel normal in the beginning, and just going with it is one of the first steps.
So I would think adding in laughter, understanding that there might be that awkwardness, and you could have some of that, like embrace that piece of it as well.
Absolutely, like keeping it playful, and even coming back if it feels safe at a later time, being like, wow, I sent that text, and just like naming it sometimes, like naming it with your partner, and like, I sent that text and it felt so awkward. And sometimes when we even name it and normalize it and talk about it at another point in time, we can laugh, and it can be light and bring some like silliness to it as well. So that's definitely one really important thing. And then I think another thing, and this is where, some various relationship institutes will call it things like meeting your partner, matching your partner, bidding on your partner, which basically means that we want to, if our partner is reaching out and they are doing something that is a foreplay, flirting type of thing, we want to make sure we respond, right? Because one of the things that happens that I think is not talked about enough is we can actually be in a very serious, loving relationship and still feel rejected.
Yeah, that is not talked about, but bidding is exactly the term. It's
Right.
exactly at a bid for affection, a bid for love. And that's a great way to put it, where it doesn't hurt feelings. It's a bid, and we need to respond to those bids that we receive. That's very important to know.
Exactly. And so it can be one of those things, like say you get a flirtatious text from your partner and you're in the middle of work and you're like, oh, this is cute, but like I can't even respond to that. Of course, a level of understanding, right, for each other around like, we are bringing this into the day. This is a new thing. But as soon as possible, and even if it's not till that evening, being like, when we see that partner, is just being like, wow, I did not respond to that, but wow, this is like what it made me feel. And so it doesn't, if you can make it happen right away so that person isn't left hanging, that's great. But also there's, with the bidding, I think an importance for allowance, and that allowance around like understanding that this is a new thing for that other person, everybody is oftentimes learning in this, so some of that allowance and acceptance is important too.
I don't think that people realize how sensitive they are to their own partner they've been with for 10 years or 20 years, or that is the person that is your person that you're so connected with, and that it can really impact you so strongly. So I think that conversation is probably key to say, I'm going to send you something, especially if what's that conversation look like for you?
And that around, like, the question is around like foreplay.
Right. Or let's start flirting, texting. We haven't done that before. How does that look like for you?
There's different ways, right? So sometimes it can be as simple as like having, like we talked about scheduling sex, right?
Yeah.
So I also talk in my work about intimacy escapades is what I call them. And it's really not just about sex. It's about, hey, having these nights where we're just actually going to take the time to connect soul to soul, heart to heart. And it can be a really great time in that kind of container, in that safe space, to say, like, well, I really want to bring flirting back. What were some of the favorite ways we flirted together when we were first together? Or what have you seen to be something that maybe turns you on day to day that you've experienced in the past we've never talked about? And so just raising that question, and the cool thing about this is you get to create that experience together. So that can also make it a lot safer, because if you have this conversation in advance and say one person says something like, wow, I really like, dirty text or flirty text, and the other person's like, that just might throw me off my day, I can't handle that. Then you can go into the conversation and say, okay, well, maybe during these hours it doesn't work. Well, what about during these hours? And you get to like co-create what your foreplay looks like together. And of course with this, there has to be that level of like tolerance around not taking offense if you offer something to your partner and they're like, well, that actually doesn't work to me, right? There needs to be some sort of like tolerance.
Yeah.
But it can actually be like this sort of exercise on one of these sexy escapades nights can actually be a great thing that leads people into a more intimate experience, even just like talking about how they're going to experience foreplay.
Well, and so we've talked a bit about foreplay leading up. It can take, a week, it can take days, it can take hours to that night that you're going to spend together. And then let's talk a little bit about foreplay. Now it's that night. Okay, we've led up to that night. Now it's that night. So let's talk a bit about how foreplay is going to be able to enhance that space for a couple.
Yeah, this is much more around, I think, what people think of as foreplay, right? So what's important to realize is men and women both like foreplay. Like what we see in surveys is that the average amount of time that couples spend in foreplay is about 5 to 7 minutes. And women, as far as what surveys say about how much foreplay they want on average 19 minutes. Men, 18 minutes. And this, when I read this, made so many things helpful for me, because it's so easy, I think, as a woman, and one of the things I've experienced is like this almost like feeling that the man does not want foreplay and that it's just like there to, kind of provide something for me. And so I have found myself, and I know other women I've worked with have seen the same, around like moving quickly to get to that final sex act.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, this is why we're here, and everything else is just to get there. But when we actually realize that, oh, this is something that both men and women really love and really desire, and in surveys we see that both partners in a hetero relationship want more of this.
Yeah.
It really allows us to then take that change to say, oh, there is benefits, and then we can slow down. And the other cool thing is, in an earlier episode, we talked, about the arousal cycle, and sometimes women needing to drop in for 20 minutes in order to actually feel aroused. Well, if we spend more time in that foreplay, which is what innately both people generally want according to surveys, then by the time we're done with that, then typically the woman is dropped more into her pleasure center and is more aroused, and everybody wins.
This is wonderful. So we have just a few minutes, but what I would love to talk about, so for foreplay, touching, kissing, touching all over the body, all of this, men and women. But I know you have a model here with us, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about the clitoral foreplay that we have discussed before off camera, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, I'll grab my model, because one of the things that is very unknown to a lot of people is that the clitoris is not just this head. It's not just this bulb. So like we're looking at a female pelvis. So you can kind of see the angle. So if I flip down, now we're looking at, so this is the anus, this is the vagina entrance, this is the urethral entrance, so that's basically where we pee out of, and this is the clitoral head. And essentially with this, one of the important things to understand is the clitoris, which has about 7,000 nerve endings, is not just this little head, it's not just that nub. It also has these crews, they're like these legs, and you can see them all the way down here, and all the way down here. And so think about this, like all of this area is also part of this huge amount of erectile tissue. So we want to make sure we're not paying attention to only this part, but this part. And then we also see, if we turn kind of this to the side here, and we see this part, so now we're looking at the inner lips, and this part here that's in this model in blue is this spongy tissue that is essentially very, very similar to the spongy tissue of a male, where it engorges, right? More blood comes there and it allows for more sensation, and it's also very, very, very tender. So one of the important things with understanding this is really understanding that when we're talking about health, when we're talking about foreplay, we want to make sure that we are encapsulating and exploring all of this and getting direct feedback from our partner about what they like, about what feels good, about faster, slower, to the right, to the left, any of these different things, because oftentimes we leave out so much of our pleasure and so much of our pleasure zones that are really related to getting us in the mood, but also just to feeling great.
And exploring that pleasure can lead to lengthening the time of that foreplay so that you can get to that 18-minute, 19-minute time frame.
Yeah, exactly. And the question around what do you do, it really is, it's like, yes, let's think about all of these different areas of the pelvis, but let's remember also that tissue all over our body is capable of experiencing pleasure. You know, the nipples, the elbows, the feet, the knees, the neck. So, you know, just really slowing down and allowing you to explore light touch, deep touch, soft kissing, harder kissing, getting that feedback from your partner about what they like. But really, you can really leave no part of the body untouched, you know, of course, with consent and that feedback from your partner.
Thank you so much for all of this information. You'll be back with us next week.
Yes.
Please let everyone know how they can reach you.
Oh, absolutely. So I really work with women that are ages 35 to 60, helping them move from average to awesome in terms of their health, their hormones, and their relationships. And I'm working on a couple different things. I have a 3-part book series coming out, so look for that. You can get my free ebook on my website called Revive Your Love Life, and you can check out my podcast, Libido Lounge, on any of your podcast platforms.
Please come back after these messages to join us with our next guest.
You nearly maxed out at your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you. Call 800-749-7781. That's 800-749-7781. Call now.
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Glenn Wilcox. Oriental medicine doctor and acupuncturist, owner of Wise Medicine and Wise Pleasure. Thank you so much for being back with us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jessica.
So I would love to talk, last time we spoke a bit about Oriental medicine and its traditional Chinese medicine and its 3 treasures. And if you could review those for us, would be great.
Yes, so in Chinese they are Qi, vital energy, Jing, vital essence, and Shen, spirit. So we can talk about energy, essence, and spirit. And those 3 are essential to having a healthy, happy life.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the brief review. As I'm trying to remember, I think it's a real challenge to be able to keep track, and that you're trying to combine with, or you are combining with conventional medicine. And we're talking a lot about how sexuality is so vital when it comes to health and well-being.
Yes.
And so we've talked about the 3 treasures, and then I just wanted to touch briefly on the balance, the yin-yang of Chinese medicine. If you could speak a little bit about that, because I know we hear a lot about that. It's a common catchphrase. If you could.
Yes, absolutely. So yin and yang are the 2 dynamically opposed but complementary forces in the universe.
Okay.
And so we can look at that in every aspect in terms of science, in terms of medicine, everywhere we find that. And you can start way out there as love and fear, but you can bring it into masculine and feminine. You can look at dry and wet. You can look at hot and cold. Yin and yang is happening everywhere. It can be electrons and protons. So that dance is essential. And so in Chinese medicine, they regarded sex as essential to good health. Good sex, good sexual relationships were an essential part of being healthy and happy. And so they looked at that in a much more inclusive way than we have traditionally in this country, but that's starting to evolve, and we're going, oh, whoa, let's talk more about this and explore this because it really is important. Yes, so my journey has been to take these traditional approaches, like in Chinese medicine and Taoist sacred sexuality practices, like in the tantric sacred sexuality practices from ancient India, and even Kadoshka, the Mesoamerican sacred sexuality practices. And so taking those and exploring those and then bringing into that mix and integrating the best of all the modern medical bioscience approaches to improving pleasure, performance, and putting that out so people have access to it to improve their lives.
That's great, and I do see that it's happening more in this country. We're seeing that more on this continent. It's coming in a little bit more.
Yes.
It's getting more involved, but in this country, it's been a bit of a disservice in this space.
And that is changing, as you say, the awareness of female sexuality. Oh my goodness, over the last decades, it's really evolved from, I mean, something as simple as, oh, okay, women have orgasms sometimes. Not all women do. We could talk about that. But now they're going, oh, women are capable of multiple orgasms. And even beyond that, oh my goodness, there's fluids that are released. There's all kinds of things that are starting to emerge. Even the awareness of anal sex has become such a big part of American sexuality, and it's not talked about so much. But that's on the female side, and we can talk about that. And then on the male side, as I said last time, men can learn to have orgasms without ejaculating. And that is so essential for men to begin to learn for their own pleasure, especially as they get older, when it's harder and harder to maybe perform, get an erection. And once you do, there's a detumescent period that is brief when you're young, but as we get older in men, it becomes longer and longer. And so learning how to have an orgasm without ejaculating allows for a man to continue on and enjoy sexual relationships and please his woman for longer periods without being depleted or diminishing that jing that we talked about, the vital essence.
That's what I was going to bring up. So is you had said before, that if men, once they have an orgasm, then, no, once they ejaculate, then they experience that loss of energy.
Right.
And that energy is what we're trying to maintain. And I've heard this, prolongation, like how long should men wait to ejaculate? You hear, a day, a week, a month longer, how that should be. And this is not having to do with when you're trying to conceive. This is not when you're trying to have a baby. That's a different timing.
Yes.
But for maintaining that energy and for performance, this is in all acts of life, right? So to enhance their cognitive performance, enhance sports performance, this is a big area as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I'd love if you touch on that a little bit.
I just had a funny thought. There's an old movie, Rocky, and Rocky's a boxer, and his coach tells him, "Women weaken legs," in the movie, right? But that's that concept being brought into And so yes, by preserving and building that jing, that essence, you will have improvements all over in terms of your cognitive abilities and your abilities to work in the workplace and make decisions and act. It can really enhance those.
Yeah. So, briefly discuss this. I'm sure our audience is pretty interested in hearing a little bit more about what does that mean to be able to have multiple orgasms as a man but not ejaculate.
Okay, so men, start to begin to have simple practices, and you can evolve this over time. You do not have to sacrifice your pleasure. That's important to remember. Okay, so one, what this allows is for you to really enjoy sex for longer periods, more frequently, and to please your partner more by being able to do that. So there are real advantages to learning how to do this. And what's the worst that can happen? If you're practicing and you happen to ejaculate while you're studying to learn to be multi-orgasmic without ejaculating, well, you have an orgasm.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. But if you start to begin to just basically explore strengthening your pubococcygeal muscle, and that's the muscle you would use if you're urinating and you suddenly wanted to stop the flow of urine, you would tighten the muscle down there, and that's the pubococcygeal muscle. So you just begin, it's called Kegel exercises. Women do it before childbirth. It's really simple stuff. Men, you can do it, and you just start to squeeze that muscle and tense it, hold it, and that will begin to develop that ability. It also has an advantage for improving prostate health. Another piece we can talk about, but later. So that's the starting point. And then you start practicing getting up right close to having an orgasm, ejaculating, and backing off and using those muscles to get up as close as you can. And eventually you'll learn to be able to go, oh my goodness, and have the nerve sensation and the pleasure sensation of the orgasm occur without the release of the fluid. Now, that's a Taoist tantric awareness that has been there for thousands of years and is taught in other societies. And it's just becoming it's just being recognized as a possibility for men in terms of sexual research here in the West. So let me say one more thing, and this has been my own personal experience, is that that's the yang side, that tightening of the pubococcygeal muscle, right? The yin side has not been talked about, which is as you get up close to ejaculating and you're about to go over the waterfall, you can also totally relax everything down there and have even better orgasms without ejaculating. So I invite men to begin to explore that. As I said in the last episode, I began my exploration with Mantak Chia's book, The Multi-Orgasmic Man. He's written The Multi-Orgasmic Couple, The Multi-Orgasmic Woman. That's a Taoist approach. There are lots of other approaches out there. Men, be aware that this can be something that really is of benefit to your relationships and your being able to have pleasure yourself and please your partner.
Yeah, and that would be for their partner too. I mean, women very frequently are like, is this going to be, is it going to be? And I think that stops women from achieving orgasm as well when their partner, when they're concerned that their partner is going to have an orgasm and that that's coming up, then they might, hold themselves back or be unable to achieve their own orgasm, worried that their partner is going to release too soon.
Yes, absolutely so. And that's such a huge issue. Those studies show that the average length of intercourse in America is around 5 minutes. And so that needs to change. Bottom line, that needs to change. With no judgment, that can change.
Yeah.
And both people, both sides of the couple can really have
Next time, let's talk about the female aspect. How about that?
I love that idea.
I love that idea too.
Yeah.
Great.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure. Would you please let everyone know what you're working on right now and how they can reach you?
All right. Folks, you can reach me. My website is drglennwilcox.com, DRGLENN, no period in there, WILCOX.com, and you can get to me through that. I am going to be teaching something called Mystic Rapture in May of next year with Amara Charles and Shayna Venice down in Costa Rica. And it's a whole week-long celebration and exploration of intimacy. It's a couples event, and it's in a beautiful location down in Costa Rica in the Blue Zone where people live. I think they live to be longer than others. So yes, you can find that. If you want, probably the link's on the screen, but amaracharles.com, go there, look for Mystic Rapture.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us. You're going to join us next week, and we're going to talk about women.
I'm in.
Right. Please stay tuned after these commercials for our next guest.
How would you like to go on a 5-star vacation for just $99? We're talking about the quality of a Westgate resort for $99. Not for one night, but for 3 fantastic nights at one of their luxurious destinations across the United States. And you'll even get a free $100 Visa gift card just for making a reservation. We've got some of the choicest destinations that you'll love in the United States that you can choose from for just $99 for a 3-night stay. Take your family, take a special loved one, but get away. Go on vacation with Westgate Resorts. Call now to make a reservation for just $99, and you get a free $100 Visa gift card. Call Westgate right now and book your vacation. Here's the number.
Call 877-930-3491. That's 877-930-3491. Again, 877-930-3491.
Do you have a car sitting around you want to get rid of? Well, here's a great idea. Donate your car now to help local veterans in your area. Yes, just make one fast call to the Veteran Car Donation Program. Within a few days, we'll come and remove your car for free. You can donate any car in any condition. We'll use our vast network to sell it. The proceeds raised go to help local veterans and their families. And you get a tax deduction. And all you need to do is make this free call. Clean your yard up, get rid of an old car, and help the vets. We make it easy. Make this free call now. Book your fast and easy pickup. Call the Veteran Car Donation Program now.
And we're back with Jim Benson. He's certified coach and certified Tantra teacher. Jim teaches Tantra teachers how to teach Tantra. He works mostly with men, and he's back with us again this week to talk with us about Tantra, sexuality, and men's health. Welcome back, Jim.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So last week we talked about embodiment, feeling within our bodies and being present. And this week we decided to talk about it's more of that Tantra space that you teach in, I believe, where it's being the balance of giving and receiving when it comes to that intimate space.
Right. So some people tend towards being givers in sexual or intimate situations, and some people tend to be takers, and then there's some people we could just say are in the middle, in that in between, or they give and receive equally. And most people like to think that that's the case for them. It's not always true. So let's talk a little bit about the tendency of the giver, for instance.
Okay.
So the giver is maybe at core a very generous person and loves to give pleasure to the other. A lot of the men I work with would fall into this category. They're like, wow, I know if I'm gonna make her have a great orgasm and give her pleasure, then she'll love me back, or it'll secure the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when I get men to work with me, they're going to be a little attached to becoming a great lover because it's going to give them this result of like, okay, now I've secured the partner that I want to secure. So in a way, though, the effect on the partner, and you can tell me if this would be true for you, is, wow, I feel like they can actually sense that. It's like they're giving to me, but they're trying to get something back. So they're trying to either secure the love, or there's some way where I feel like there's an unspoken agreement that's trying to be made here, some kind of contract almost that's being made. So have you ever been in a situation where you felt like someone was giving in order to get from you?
Actually, very honestly, isn't it?
Wow.
No, when someone's giving, I feel like they're wanting to be there, wanting to please, and I feel like that handoff back and forth is really important. But I haven't actually felt that. Maybe I should be paying more attention.
No. Maybe you should count your blessings. You're attracting awesome men.
Oh, I do actually attract awesome men.
It's probably the case. So the challenge for the person who gives in order to get, and usually it's like a nice guy. That would be the archetype. Would be a nice guy archetype. Mm-hmm. That person needs to learn to be a little more selfish, or to get things for their own needs to be met. And it can be challenging because it puts attention on them, and they would rather have the attention be on the other person. So it's a great personal practice if you tend to be a giver, to learn to receive and to take things in. And you can also practice giving to yourself. We talked a little last time about the pleasure list. Mm-hmm. So the pleasure list is all about giving to yourself. What can I do to do things for me where I'm going to experience some level of pleasure, whether it's a great vacation, or if it's a walk to the creek, or it's intimate time with my partner, or spending time with my kids, or some kind of physical activity. Those are all good things to do for yourself because it feels good for you. So that's a way to counterbalance this tendency. I'm going to give, I'm going to secure the love that I'm hoping to secure by this over-giving, we could call it.
So in giving to yourself with that pleasure list, is that kind of like being the receiver and the giver at the same time? So you can feel that this is how good it feels to receive from me, maybe feel some joy in that space, and really have some, feel confident and good about what you're giving to other people. And then on the flip side, are those people then feeling that they shouldn't be receiving? Or is it that they don't feel they're worthy of
That's
receiving?
right. The people who are the overgivers often
don't feel like they're worthy of receiving.
A lot of times, yeah.
So how do you help them in that space?
Well, that's why you have the pleasure list, is so that they start giving to themselves.
They learn how to receive.
And then they learn to ask for things that it might be edgy for them. So for instance, like I had a partner who would not touch my genitals just at all, and it turned out because she didn't necessarily want to, not at all, but it was rare that she would just touch my genitals. And it was because she thought it would mean to me that we would want to be sexual, and she was not feeling sexual. So
you have to have communication.
Yes, I had to say, like, look, there are times when I just want you to hold my genitals, and just because I'm getting an erection doesn't mean we're going to be having sex.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay. So that kind of communication, now all of a sudden, she could feel more comfortable in an intimate situation without thinking it had to lead to sex.
Okay, so the ask, even if it's not that, because that's a significant ask. So how do you help men with a smaller ask? Like, is it
Exactly it.
Yeah,
You make
so
small asks.
What?
Yeah.
Give me some examples of small asks to get people to say, okay, I'm not going to get turned down. I'm going to receive. Is it just, give me a kiss on the cheek? Give me this kiss on
Could
the
be.
cheek.
I need. I'm feeling some tension in my shoulders. Could you give me a 2-minute back rub?
Mm-hmm.
And then you really take it in. You really receive it.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to hear someone say no, which is a lot of the fear that the overgiver has. Like, oh, I'm going to have to hear them say. I'm going to have to say. You hear my partner say no to a minor ask, but it's low enough risk that I can handle that.
So I don't want to bring this to children because we are not talking about children right now, but when my kids were little and there was some behavioral stuff, I learned this: make a list of things that you can do for 5 minutes with your children, and then do one of those things every day for 5 minutes and let them pick. So I would sit down with my daughter and she made a list of what those things are, and then every day we could do something on that list, and then she felt seen, she felt, that she had my attention. Is that something you would have partners do together?
Great. I love the 5-minute thing. You can actually set a
5
timer,
minutes, yeah.
set a timer and have it for 5 minutes, and then to have your partner do a giving and receiving practice and be like, all right, you can get anything you want from your partner right now.
Yep, here's the list.
Spank me for 5 minutes.
There,
Whatever it
there
is.
you go, that's it.
Someone's
yeah.
going to get a sore body part from that.
Well, maybe not, so that's it. So, okay, so everybody you could sit down as a couple and you could have a list. You could each make a list. It'd be a fun activity where you sit down with your partner and say, okay, put everything on your list that you could do for 5 minutes, and then there should probably be some part of that where you share your lists and say, okay, I'm not willing to do this, I'm not willing to do this, I'm not, so you can have that communication.
That's the no part.
That's the
and
no
then you
part.
negotiate from there.
Yeah, and then say, okay, and then when you have your list that is safe, that everybody says, yep, I'll do those things, you'll do these things, and then every day do a 5-minute activity on the list. I think everybody at home should be doing that today. I think this is a great idea.
So let's talk a little bit about the receiving part of it, because you can also have a little distortion on the recipient side. So if you receive, you're like, yes, I love to give, I love to be receiving, I love to be receiving. Then the shadow side of that would be you're a taker. So you tend to take things from people, or you take things in and you're not giving back. So it can feel a little selfish to the person who's the giver. And so the challenge for the receiver, let's just say you are a good receiver, like maybe you are a good receiver, and the challenge for someone who's a good receiver would be to be able to give and feel the vulnerability of giving where you might be rejected. So if there's I'm now gonna step into the giver role where I'm uncomfortable, and maybe I'm giving to somebody who's the receiver, and they're going to be a little uncomfortable because they're usually in the giver role. So how do I move through the discomfort of giving and finding out? It's a great way to walk in the other person's shoes. You're like, okay, now I'm going to be giving. I feel the vulnerability of that because I could be rejected, but I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to do some small giving service. And now you feel like, oh, this is actually working really well. I kind of like doing this. I'm expanding my sexual palette, my erotic options.
And that's how you get the person who's usually the chronic receiver that receives all the time to start getting into that giving cycle.
Yes.
And then your partner who's usually a giver has to be in that same discomfort. So you have
That's
two
right.
partners that could be in discomfort.
Yes.
During this while they're trying to give and receive. So
Yes.
what's that conversation like?
You work through that. You learn to tolerate that discomfort in order to grow.
Yeah.
So no one says it's going to be easy, but the payoff is big. And that's not to say you can't just go back to maybe one of you tends to give more and the other tends to receive more. But there's something that happens. There's a magic that happens when you step over into the other person's world. And there's a beauty in that. There's a appreciation, there's empathy that starts to happen, like, oh God, I can see how hard it is for you to give. So it's a blessing to be able to switch back and forth with ease. And I don't know, it sounds like you've had very good balance.
I do. I have very good balance. But I've done a lot of work also. I've done very similar work that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that it does make a big difference. And this can be in new partnership. This can be in long-lasting, 30-year marriages. house, it can be in any of those spaces where we can see you can step into this change. It seems like it's harder when you're in a long-lasting relationship than something new. Something new, it's easy to introduce something new, but something you've been in for a really long time, that's a toughie.
You have deep grooves that have been carved.
Yeah.
And how do you break out of the rut that's there and start a whole new, fresh way of doing it? I love doing that with couples who've been in together for a long time.
That's great. That's great. Well, on that note, please let everyone know what you're working on and how they can reach you so they can do this work with you.
My work is theawakenedmasculine.com. I work with mostly men, but also couples, and it's what I'd love to do the most.
And you do, you have some programs there that men can do that are automated on their own. So if they choose to go in, if they're a little shy to start, and dip their toe in the water there without having to have a whole bunch of conversation about this first.
Absolutely. Online programs you can do yourself in the privacy of your own bedroom.
Perfect. And then when you're ready, then you can reach out to Jim, and then he can help you in your relationship. And you do mostly work with men.
Yeah, mostly men.
With men and couples.
And couples,
yes. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jim.
A pleasure to be here.
So you'll join us again next week.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Welcome. Oh my goodness, all the things. Come back next week for our next episode of The New Health.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.
What if you could make a free phone call and reduce your car payment by as much as $83 a month? Right now, you could be paying as high as 20% interest. Your new interest rate could be reduced to as low as 2.48%. You can refinance any existing car loan or leased car and save money every month. Take 5 minutes of your time